6 weeks after I buried my husband, a contractor called me and said something that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Hartwell, I need you to come see what we found, but don't come alone. Bring your sons, both of them." My name is Elena Hartwell. I'm 64 years old. I was married to David for 38 years. I thought I knew everything about him. I was wrong. Before I tell you what was in that room, I need you to understand who David was to me, or at least who I thought he was. We met in the spring of 1986 at a grocery store on Merriman Avenue in Asheville, North Carolina. I was 26, working as a first-grade teacher at a local elementary school. He was 28, said he'd just moved to town for a consulting job. He had kind eyes and a crooked smile, and when he asked if he could buy me a cup of coffee, I said yes before I could think of a reason to say no. 3 months later, he proposed. In a treehouse of all places, one he'd built himself in the backyard of the little house he was renting. He said he wanted our life together to start somewhere magical. I should have known then that David had a flair for the dramatic. We were married in June of that year. Small ceremony. Just a few friends, no family. I had none left, and David said his parents had passed when he was young. 2 souls finding each other, that's what the minister said. 38 years. 2 sons. 4 grandchildren. A lifetime of Sunday dinners and Christmas mornings and ordinary Tuesday nights watching television on the couch. And then on March 20th of this year, David's car went off the Blue Ridge Parkway. Brake failure, the police said. He died on impact. I buried him on a Thursday. It rained the whole day, like even the sky was mourning. For 6 weeks I walked through our house like a ghost. His reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. His coffee mug, the one that said "World's Okayest Grandpa," still hung on the hook by the sink. Every morning I'd pour 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then stand there staring at the second cup, wondering when my brain would catch up with reality. My sons worried about me. Brandon, my eldest, drove over every other day with his wife Jessica and their 2 kids, Sophie and Lucas. Ryan, my younger boy, called from Seattle every night at 8 o'clock sharp. "Mom, you need to eat something." "Mom, have you been outside today?" "Mom, maybe you should talk to someone." I told them I was fine. I lied. The truth was, I wasn't just grieving. I was confused. Because in the weeks after David died, I started noticing things. Small things. Things that didn't add up. Like the second cell phone I found in his desk drawer, one I'd never seen before, with a passcode I couldn't crack. Like the $47,000 withdrawal from our savings account last November that David said was for investment purposes. I never saw any investment statements. Like the fact that in 38 years of marriage, I had never once been inside David's office downtown. He always said it was boring, just paperwork and old files. Nothing worth seeing. But now David was gone, and his office lease was up at the end of the month. Someone had to clean it out. So I hired a contractor named Robert Davis to assess the space before I dealt with it. That was my first mistake, or maybe it was my first step toward the truth. The call came on a Sunday morning 6 weeks after the funeral. I was sitting in David's study at home, holding his reading glasses, trying to decide if I was ready to pack up his things. The phone rang and I almost didn't answer. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Hartwell." The voice on the other end was tight strained. "This is Robert Davis, the contractor working on your husband's office." "Yes, Mr. Davis, is everything all right? I wasn't expecting the work to be done until—" "Ma'am, I need you to come down here, right now." I sat up straighter. Robert Davis was a man who'd spent 30 years in construction. He'd seen rotted foundations, black mold, asbestos, probably even a dead body or 2. Nothing rattled him, but right now his voice was shaking. "What's wrong?" I asked. "What did you find?" A long pause. I could hear him breathing. "I can't explain it over the phone. You need to see it yourself." "But Mrs. Hartwell," another pause. "Don't come alone. Bring your sons. Both of them." The line went dead. I sat there for a full minute, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the silence. "Bring your sons. Both of them. What could possibly require both of my sons?" My hands were trembling as I dialed Brandon's number. Brandon arrived first, still in his Sunday clothes, pressed khakis, and a button-down shirt, even on his day off. That was my eldest. Always put together, always prepared. He'd inherited my cautious nature, or maybe he'd learned it from watching me. "Mom, what's going on?" He stood in my living room, car keys still in his hand. "You sounded scared on the phone." "I don't know," I admitted. "The contractor found something in your father's office. He wouldn't tell me what." Found what Dad's office is just paperwork, files, boring stuff. That's what he always told me too. Brandon's eyes met mine, and I saw the same flicker of doubt I'd been feeling for weeks. Ryan landed at the Asheville airport 4 hours later. He'd booked the first flight out of Seattle the moment I called no questions asked. That was my younger son, impulsive, quick to act, fiercely protective. He walked through my front door with red-rimmed eyes and pulled me into a hug so tight I couldn't breathe. "Whatever it is," he said into my hair, "we'll handle it together." I wanted to believe him. The three of us drove downtown in Brandon's silver Lexus. Nobody spoke. The silence felt heavy, pregnant with questions none of us wanted to ask. David's office was on the second floor of a building on Patton Avenue, a space he'd rented for 25 years. 25 years, and I'd never been inside. He always said there was no point, just boring paperwork. Robert Davis met us at the entrance. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with hands that looked like they'd built half the houses in Buncombe County. Right now, those hands were shaking. "Mrs. Hartwell." He didn't offer a handshake, just nodded toward the stairs. "Second floor. I think you need to see it for yourself." The office looked exactly like I'd imagined. Neat desk, filing cabinets, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes. The faint scent of David's cologne still lingered, sandalwood, and something citrusy, the smell I'd fallen asleep beside for 38 years. But Robert wasn't looking at the desk or the filing cabinets. He was looking at the bookshelf on the far wall. "I was checking the walls for moisture damage," he explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "Standard procedure. That's when I noticed this wall was hollow." He walked over to the bookshelf and pointed at one particular book. "And then I found this." It was a collection of Emily Dickinson poems, the same book I'd given David for our 10th anniversary. Robert reached out and pulled it forward like a lever. Click. The bookshelf swung inward, revealing a doorway behind it, and darkness beyond. The room was roughly 8 feet by 10 feet, windowless, climate-controlled. The air inside was cool and dry, like a museum archive. But what it contained was no museum. 15 filing cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled in David's familiar handwriting. Names, dates, dollar amounts. In the corner sat an old television with a VHS player connected beneath it. A leather office chair, David's chair, the one that had disappeared from his home study years ago, sat in the center of the room like a command post. And on every wall, security monitors displayed live feeds from cameras I couldn't see. "Jesus Christ," Ryan whispered. Brandon moved first. He always did. That accountant's brain of his needed to organize chaos into something comprehensible. He walked to the nearest cabinet and pulled open a drawer. Files spilled out. Photographs, bank statements, audio cassettes with handwritten labels. "Mom," his voice was strange thin, like someone had punched him in the gut. These are blackmail files." I couldn't move. My legs felt welded to the floor. Brandon kept reading, his face growing paler by the second. 47 people, dating back to 1999. 25 years. He looked up at me. Dad was blackmailing 47 people for 25 years. Ryan grabbed another file. His hands were shaking. "This one's a pharmaceutical executive. Paid Dad almost $1 million over 8 years to keep quiet about some kind of Medicare fraud scheme." "This one's a judge," Brandon said, pulling out another folder. "Harold Morrison, $800,000. Mayor Lawrence Patterson," Ryan read from another file. $1.2 million. The names kept coming. Politicians, businessmen, law enforcement, lawyers, all of them documented in David's meticulous handwriting. Payment schedules, evidence photos, recorded conversations. My husband, the man who brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning, who taught our sons to ride bikes, who cried at Sophie's kindergarten graduation, had been running a criminal empire for a quarter of a century. And I never knew. Ryan found the tape tucked behind the television. It was in a clear plastic case with a strip of masking tape across the front. 3 words in David's handwriting. "For Elena, watch first." My hands trembled as I took it from him. "Mom," Brandon's voice was gentle. "Are you sure you want to play it?" He slid the tape into the VHS player. Static flickered across the screen. Then the image resolved and my heart stopped. David. He was sitting in this very room, in this very chair. The timestamp in the corner read March 6, 2024, 2 weeks before he died. He looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. His silver hair was disheveled, not carefully combed like he always kept it. This wasn't the David who kissed me goodbye every morning. This was a man carrying a weight I couldn't see. Elena. His voice filled the room and I had to grip the edge of the desk to stay upright. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and someone close to our family is responsible. Brandon grabbed my arm. Ryan stepped closer. I need you to understand something, David continued on screen. Everything in this room, everything I built over 25 years, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about greed. It was about protection. Your protection. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into the camera like he could see me through time. The person who killed me is someone you trust completely. Someone who's been in our home, at our dinner table, part of our lives for years. My blood turned to ice. I can't name them on this tape. It's too dangerous. But I've left everything you need in the other recordings. Watch them in order. He paused, and for a moment I saw something crack in his composure. Fear, grief, love. Trust Brandon and Ryan. They're good men. You raised them well. Another pause. But be very careful who else you tell about this. Especially our daughters-in-law. The screen flickered. David glanced off camera like he'd heard something. When he looked back, there was urgency in his expression. I love you. I've always loved you. Everything I did. The tape cut to static. We stood in silence. I don't know for how long. Minutes. Hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. Daughters-in-law, Brandon said finally. His voice was hollow. He said daughters-in-law. Jessica. But I was thinking of someone else. Someone who wasn't technically a daughter-in-law, but close enough. Megan. David's daughter from before we met the child I'd raised as my own since she was 2 years old. Megan, who was married to a man named Derek Wallace. Megan, who I suddenly realized I hadn't heard from in almost a week. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Everyone froze. I pulled it out with numb fingers. Unknown number. One text message. She knew too much. So do you. Stop looking, or your grandchildren will pay the price. 3 black SUVs pulled into my driveway at exactly 5:15 that evening. I watched them through the living room window, my phone still clutched in my hand, that threatening text message burning into my memory. She knew too much. So do you. Stop looking, or your grandchildren will pay the price. Brandon stood beside me, his face pale. Ryan was already moving toward the door, fists clenched, ready to fight whoever was coming. Wait, I said. Look at the plates. Government plates. Federal. The doors opened and 4 people emerged. 2 men, 2 women, all wearing dark suits and expressions that told me this wasn't a social visit. The man in front, mid-50s, broad shoulders, military bearing, held up a badge as he approached my porch. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm Deputy Marshal Thomas Bennett, U.S. Marshal Service. This is Special Agent Catherine Moore, FBI. He gestured to the woman beside him, sharp eyes, graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. We need to talk about your husband. I opened the door before they could knock. I think, I said quietly, you'd better come inside. My living room felt smaller with 6 people in it. The agents remained standing while Brandon, Ryan, and I sat on the couch, the same couch where David and I had watched television every night for decades. Agent Moore spoke first. Mrs. Hartwell, we've been monitoring your husband's operation for approximately 6 months. Since October of last year, when one of his targets reported extortion to our Charlotte field office. You knew, Ryan's voice was sharp. You knew what he was doing and you just watched. We weren't investigating simple blackmail, Mr. Hartwell. Moore's tone was patient but firm. Your father was documenting something much larger, a criminal network spanning 40 years, corruption, drug trafficking, money laundering. The people he was collecting payments from weren't innocent victims. They were participants in organized crime. Brandon leaned forward. Are you saying Dad was working with the FBI? Not officially, but he had agreed to turn over his files once we arranged appropriate protection for your family. Moore paused. He was scheduled to meet with us on March 21st. The date hit me like a physical blow. March 21st. One day after David died. He never made it, I whispered. No. Moore's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Hartwell, the official report says your husband died in a car accident. Brake failure on Blue Ridge Parkway. She paused. Our forensic team examined the wreckage. The brake lines were cut. Professionally. nearly impossible to detect. The room tilted. I gripped the arm of the couch. David was murdered, Brandon said. Not a question, a statement. Yes, on his way to deliver evidence that would have exposed dozens of powerful people. Moore opened a folder. Which brings us to why we're here. Marshall Bennett stepped forward. Mrs. Hartwell, your stepdaughter Megan Porter withdrew $4.7 million from one of your husband's trust accounts 5 days ago. Using legitimate power of attorney, she was named executor of his estate. Megan handled David's business affairs, I said slowly. She had authorization. The amount and timing are concerning. Bennett pulled up something on his tablet. Same day she made the withdrawal, she purchased a one-way plane ticket to Charlotte. Paid cash. Last cell phone signal was detected at Charlotte Douglas International Airport at 2:45 p.m. Since then, nothing. No credit card activity, no hotel check-ins, no rental cars. She's vanished. Vanished? Ryan stood abruptly. What do you mean vanished? Have you looked for her? We're looking, Mr. Hartwell, but there's more. Bennett glanced at Moore, then back at me. 2 days ago, a friend of Megan's in Boston received an email from an anonymous account. We believe it was from Megan. He turned the tablet toward me. The email was short, just a few lines. Tell my family I found what Dad was hiding. It's worse than I thought. I can't come home until I finish this. Tell Mom Elena I'm sorry. And tell her, don't trust D. Don't trust D. Derek, Megan's husband. Where is Derek? I heard myself ask. Derek Wallace hasn't been seen since April 18th, Moore said. His office says he took personal leave for a family emergency. His house, the one he shared with Megan, has been cleared out. Forensics found evidence of a hasty departure, wiped hard drives, burned documents. He's running, Brandon said, or hunting. Moore's eyes met mine. Mrs. Hartwell, we believe Megan discovered something about her husband, something dangerous. And we believe Derek Wallace is not who he claims to be. The next hour changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Agent Moore spread documents across my coffee table photographs, official records files stamped with faded FBI seals. Marshall Bennett stood by the window watching the street like he expected trouble to arrive at any moment. Mrs. Hartwell, Moore began carefully, or should I say, Mrs. Morrison. I froze. I'm sorry. Your name, your real name. Moore slid a photograph across the table. An old photo, black and white, showing a young woman maybe 24 or 25. Dark hair, frightened eyes. The woman in the photo was me. Elena Morrison, Moore continued. Born August 12, 1960 in Richmond, Virginia. Parents Thomas and Eleanor Morrison. My voice faltered. I don't understand what you're talking about. But even as I said the words, something stirred in the back of my mind. A feeling. A shadow. Like trying to remember a dream that slips away the moment you wake up. On October 12, 1984, your parents were murdered in their Richmond home. Moore's voice was gentle now, like she was delivering news to a trauma patient. The house was set on fire to destroy evidence. You were the only survivor. You hid in the basement while the killers searched the house. Smoke. The word flashed through my mind, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The smell of smoke, heat pressing down, floorboards creaking above me. Mom! Brandon grabbed my arm. Mom, are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was drowning in images I didn't recognize. Memories that felt like they belonged to someone else. A woman screaming. My mother screaming until she wasn't screaming anymore. Heavy footsteps. A man's voice. Check the basement. Pressing myself against the cold concrete wall, trying to disappear. Orange light flickering through the cracks in the floorboards. Fire. Everything was fire. Mrs. Morrison. Moore's voice cut through the chaos. Elena, look at me. I looked up. My face was wet with tears I didn't remember crying. In 1984, after your parents' murder, you were placed in the Witness Security Program. WITSEC. You were given a new identity, Elena Hartwell, and relocated to Asheville, North Carolina. Moore paused. The trauma of what you witnessed, combined with intensive therapy, caused you to suppress those memories. For your own protection. 40 years, I whispered. You're telling me I've been living under a fake name for 40 years. It's not fake, Marshall Bennett said quietly. Elena Hartwell is who you became, but Elena Morrison is who you were. Ryan was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. You're saying our mom is in witness protection, that her parents were murdered? Yes. By who? Brandon demanded. Who killed her parents? Moore and Bennett exchanged a glance. Whatever they were about to say, they'd been dreading it. Your grandparents, Moore said slowly, were killed by members of an organized crime family known as the Harrison Syndicate. The head of the organization was a man named William Harrison. He ordered the hit. Why? I asked. Why would he want my parents dead? Moore hesitated. That's complicated, Mrs. Morrison. Your father had business dealings with William Harrison. There was a dispute, a significant amount of money. Your father threatened to go to authorities. Harrison decided to eliminate the problem. And the killers, Brandon pressed, were they ever caught? One of them, a man named Marcus Webb, was eventually identified through your testimony. He died in prison in 1997. Moore paused. The second killer was never found. He disappeared immediately after the murders, changed his name, changed his face, vanished. Until now, Ryan asked quietly. Moore nodded. We believe the second killer has been living under an assumed identity for the past 40 years. And we believe... She took a breath. We believe he married your stepsister Megan in 2018. The room went silent. Derek, I breathed. Derek Wallace's real name is James Harrison, William Harrison's son. Moore's voice was heavy. He was 19 years old when he participated in your parents' murder. He watched while Marcus Webb killed them, and 6 years ago he married into your family. I found the evidence myself. After the agents left after they'd promised protection, installed panic buttons, stationed cars outside, I remembered David's words from the tape. Watch them in order. There were more tapes in that hidden room, more secrets. And there was something else David had mentioned in his final video. I've left everything you need. But he hadn't left it in the office. He'd left it somewhere only I would know to look. The treehouse. Brandon drove while Ryan sat in the back with me holding my hand like I might float away if he let go. 20 minutes later, we were standing in my backyard looking up at the weathered wooden structure David had built 38 years ago, the treehouse where he'd proposed. I'll go up, Ryan said. No. I squeezed his hand, then released it. This is something I need to do myself. The ladder creaked under my weight, but it held. Inside the platform was dusty, covered with dried leaves. But I knew exactly where to look. Third plank from the left. I pried it up with trembling fingers. Underneath, wrapped in waterproof tarp, was a metal lockbox. Inside, a VHS tape labeled The Truth About Derek Wallace, a USB drive, an envelope of photographs, and a letter 8 pages, handwritten, dated March 19, 2024. One day before David died. I read the letter in my living room, my sons on either side of me. My darling Elena, if you're reading this, he killed me. Derek Wallace is James Harrison, the man who stood and watched while your parents burned 40 years ago. He married Megan to infiltrate our family. 6 years, my love. 6 years he's been sitting at our dinner table playing with our grandchildren, pretending to be one of us, all while searching for any sign that Elena Morrison was still alive. He doesn't know you're her. He thinks you're just my wife, just Elena Hartwell. That's the only reason you're still breathing. I've been protecting you since the day we met. Every person I collected payments from, every politician, every judge, every dirty cop, they were all connected to your parents' murder. They helped cover it up. They buried evidence, dismissed cases, destroyed testimony. I kept them afraid. I kept them quiet. Because as long as they feared exposure, they would never come looking for you. I know what I did was wrong. I know I lied to you for 40 years. But Elena, my love, I would do it all again. Every lie, every crime, every sleepless night. Because keeping you safe was the only thing that ever mattered. Derek is dangerous. He's been planning something I don't know what. But I'm going to confront him tomorrow. March 20th, Blue Ridge Parkway Overlook. I have evidence that proves who he really is. If I don't come back, everything you need is in this box. Take it to Agent Moore at the FBI. She'll know what to do. I love you. I've always loved you. I'll love you beyond death. Forgive me. Forever yours, David. We watched the tape together. It was dash cam footage hidden in David's car. The timestamp read March 20th, 2024, 6:00 p.m. David's voice first, Derek. Or should I call you James? Then Derek's voice, the same voice I'd heard at family dinners, at Christmas gatherings, at Sophie's birthday parties, turned cold and cruel. You've been bleeding my father's associates dry for 25 years, David. It ends now. Your father murdered my wife's parents. Derek laughed. My father killed a lot of people. The Morrisons weren't special. The sound of metal on metal, something being cut. What are you doing? David's voice. Brake lines. Derek's voice was casual, almost cheerful. Brake failure on a mountain road. Accidents happen, David, especially to men your age. You won't get away with this. I already have. Derek's face appeared close to the camera. That terrible smile. Give my regards to the Morrisons. The video showed David's car pulling away, engine sounds, then a scream, metal grinding, a sickening crash, silence. I sat in my living room as the screen went, black tears streaming down my face. 40 years ago, that man helped murder my parents. 6 weeks ago, he murdered my husband. And somewhere out there, he had my daughter. Mom, Brandon's voice was steady, but his eyes were red. What do we do? I looked at my sons, the boys David and I had raised together, the men they'd become. I thought about Sophie and Lucas, innocent children who had no idea their grandfather had been killed by someone they called Uncle Derek. I thought about David, who had spent 40 years building walls of secrets around me, who had lied and stolen and broken the law, all to keep me safe from a past I didn't even remember. And I thought about Megan, somewhere out there running from or captured by the monster she'd married. We find him, she said, and we finish what David started. The call came at 7:42 the next morning. I hadn't slept. None of us had. Brandon and Ryan stayed at my house, camped out in the living room with FBI agents positioned at every entrance. Agent Moore had gone back to the field office to coordinate the search for Derek, but she'd left 2 agents behind, a young woman named Torres and an older man named Phillips, to monitor any incoming threats. My phone rang. Unknown number. Agent Torres held up her hand. We're tracing it. Keep him talking as long as you can, I answered. Elena Hartwell. Derek's voice was smooth, pleasant, like he was calling to invite me to Sunday brunch. Or should I say, Elena Morrison. My blood turned to ice. Oh yes, he continued. I know exactly who you are. David thought he was so clever, hiding you in plain sight for 40 years. But he made one mistake. He kept files, detailed files, and my dear wife Megan. He laughed softly. She found them. Where is Megan? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Safe, for now. A pause. But that's not who you should be worried about, Elena. Something cold settled in my stomach. Sophie and Lucas are with me. The room tilted. Brandon grabbed my arm. Ryan was already moving toward the door before Phillips stopped him. If you've hurt them? I haven't. I don't hurt children. Derek's voice hardened. But I will if you force me to. That's entirely up to you. What do you want? I want you to come to me. Alone. No FBI, no marshals, no sons playing hero. He paused. Riverside Mill. The old textile factory by the French Broad River. You have 2 hours. And if I refuse, silence. Then a small voice, Sophie's voice, crying in the background. Grandma, Grandma, I'm scared. The line went dead. Absolutely not. Agent Moore's voice crackled through the speakerphone. She'd been patched in from the field office. You are not walking into that building alone. That's suicide. He has my grandchildren. My voice broke on the last word. He has Sophie and Lucas. And we will get them back. We have tactical teams, hostage negotiators. He said no FBI. If he sees a single agent, he'll kill them. I looked at Brandon, at Ryan. Their faces were pale, torn between wanting to protect me and knowing I was right. I have to go. Mrs. Morrison. My name is Elena. I stood up straighter. And those are my grandchildren. My husband died protecting this family. I'm not going to let his sacrifice be for nothing. The line was silent for a long moment. Compromise, Moore finally said. You go in alone. We establish a perimeter 2 miles out, far enough that Derek won't see us close enough to breach if something goes wrong. How will you know if something goes wrong? We'll know. Moore's voice softened slightly. We have technology, Mrs. Hartwell. Micro cameras, audio transmitters. We'll see and hear everything. The moment you're in danger, we move. I thought about David. How he'd spent 40 years protecting me in secret, carrying burdens I never knew existed. Now it was my turn. Okay, they said. Tell me what I need to do. Riverside Mill rose from the riverbank like a corpse, 3 stories of crumbling brick and broken windows abandoned since 2012. Graffiti covered the lower walls. Weeds pushed through cracks in the parking lot. The French Broad River flowed past, indifferent to the horror about to unfold inside. I parked David's old Buick, the car the FBI had swept for tracking devices, the car that now contained enough hidden surveillance equipment to fill a small electronics store, and stepped out into the morning air. My glasses weren't really glasses. They contained a micro camera that transmitted everything I saw to the FBI command vehicle 2 miles away. A dental implant installed in a rushed, painful procedure 3 hours ago picked up every word I spoke and every word spoken to me. If I said the word Morrison, tactical teams would breach within 90 seconds. 90 seconds. That was all that stood between my grandchildren and a killer. I walked toward the entrance. The first floor was empty, rusted machinery, scattered debris, the smell of mold and decay. I moved slowly, carefully, my heart pounding so loud I was sure Derek could hear it. 3rd floor. His voice echoed from somewhere above. Don't keep me waiting, Elena. The stairs groaned under my feet. 2nd floor, more emptiness, holes in the floorboards. 3rd floor, a vast open space, morning light streaming through shattered windows. And there in the center of the room sat 2 small figures. Sophie and Lucas, tied to metal chairs, tape over their mouths. Their eyes went wide when they saw me. Sophie was crying. Lucas looked frozen with fear, but they were alive. Grandma! Sophie's voice was muffled behind the tape, but I heard it. I heard the terror, the hope, the desperate need for me to make everything okay. There she is. Derek stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt dressed for a casual Saturday, not a kidnapping. A gun sat holstered at his hip, his hand resting on it casually. The pleasant son-in-law mask was gone. In its place was something cold, something calculating, something that had been hiding behind that friendly smile for 6 years. Elena Morrison, he said, I've been waiting 40 years to meet you properly. Let them go. My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by that. They're children. They have nothing to do with any of this. Not yet. Derek gestured to a metal chair facing Sophie and Lucas. Sit. We need to talk. I sat. The chair was cold. I could feel the FBI watching through my glasses, listening through my implant. Torres and Phillips and Moore all holding their breath, waiting for the signal. Not yet. I needed to know where Derek was keeping Megan. I needed to understand his plan. You know who I am, I said. You know what happened to my parents. So why are we here? What do you want? Derek smiled. It was the same smile I'd seen at family dinners at Christmas Eve gatherings. The same smile that had fooled all of us for 6 years. I want you to understand, he said. Before the end, I want you to know the truth. What truth? He walked slowly around the room, his footsteps echoing in the empty space. My father wasn't a good man. William Harrison, drug trafficking, extortion, murder. He did it all. Derek paused by the window looking out at the river. But he had principles. He never targeted families, never harmed innocents, unless they gave him no choice. My parents were innocent. Were they? Derek turned back to face me. His eyes were cold. Is that what David told you? Is that what you've believed all these years? Something in his tone made my stomach clench. Your father, Thomas Morrison, was a real estate developer. Successful, respected. Derek reached into his pocket and pulled out a folder yellowed with age, edges worn. In 1983, my father paid Thomas Morrison $2 million as a deposit for 40 acres in Henrico County. A legitimate land deal. He tossed the folder onto my lap. Your father took the money. Then he sold the same land to another developer. Pocketed both payments. Derek's voice hardened. When my father confronted him, Thomas Morrison laughed in his face. What are you going to do? He said. Call the police. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were bank statements, property records, transaction receipts dated 1983 and 1984, and my father's signature, over and over again. Your mother helped, Derek continued. Eleanor Morrison managed the company finances. She knew exactly where that money came from. She helped hide it offshore accounts, shell companies, Cayman Islands, Switzerland. He paused. David found those accounts in 2019, still active, $1.8 million. No, the word came out as a whisper. You're lying. I'm not. And deep down you know it. Derek crouched in front of me, his face level with mine. Your parents weren't innocent victims, Elena. They were thieves. They stole from a dangerous man and thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. I stared at the documents. My father's handwriting, my mother's signature, evidence of fraud, of theft, of crimes I never knew existed. David knew, Derek said softly. He found all of this years ago, but he never told you. He let you believe your parents were martyrs, heroes, because he loved you, and he knew the truth would destroy you. I don't know how long I sat there staring at those papers. 40 years of grief, 40 years of mourning parents I thought were innocent, 40 years of being protected from a truth that would have shattered everything I believed about myself. David knew. He carried that knowledge alone, let me live in a comfortable lie because he loved me too much to hurt me with the truth. And now Derek Wallace, James Harrison, the man who had watched my parents die, was the one telling me who they really were. It doesn't matter. My voice came out stronger than I expected. Whatever my parents did, they didn't deserve to burn alive, and neither did David. David spent 25 years bleeding my father's associates dry, Derek snapped. He destroyed lives. He drove men to suicide. He tore apart families. His composure cracked just for a moment. He blackmailed me for $600,000 over 8 years. I had changed my name, changed my face, built a completely new life. I wasn't James Harrison anymore. But David didn't care. He punished me for sins I committed when I was 19 years old. So you killed him. I gave him a choice. Derek's voice was ice. Stop or face the consequences. He chose consequences. I looked at Sophie and Lucas. My granddaughter was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. My grandson sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on me with absolute trust. They believed I would save them. They believed Grandma could fix anything. I had to try. And now, I asked, what's your plan? Kill me, kill them. Derek reached into the medical bag at his feet and pulled out a syringe filled with clear liquid. Insulin, he said calmly. Massive dose. You'll fall asleep. Your heart will stop in 3 minutes. Painless. The medical examiner will rule it suicide grief over David's death. Perfectly plausible. He held up the syringe. You die. The children go free. Your sons raise them. Everyone moves on. And you? I disappear. New name, new life. Again. He smiled. I'm good at it. I looked at the syringe, at Derek, at my grandchildren. David had spent 40 years protecting me. He'd lied, stolen, broken every law, committed crimes that would have sent him to prison for the rest of his life, all to keep me safe from this moment. And now I had a choice. Die and let my grandchildren live, or fight and risk losing everything. Let me say goodbye to them first. My voice was steady. Let me hold them one more time, then I'll do whatever you want. Derek studied me for a long moment, calculating, suspicious. Then he nodded. 2 minutes. I walked to Sophie and Lucas on shaking legs. I knelt in front of them, cupping Sophie's face in my hands, brushing the tears from her cheeks. Listen to me, I whispered so quiet only they could hear. When I say a special word, you run. Both of you. Down the stairs out the front door. Don't stop. Don't look back. Do you understand? Sophie's eyes widened. She nodded almost imperceptibly. The word is Morrison, I breathed. Can you remember that? Another tiny nod. I turned to Lucas, kissed his forehead. You're so brave, I told him. Just like your grandpa. When Sophie runs, you run with her. Stay together. Promise me. His small hand squeezed mine. I stood up and turned to face Derek. I'm ready. He approached with the syringe. I have to admit I'm surprised. I expected more of a fight. I'm 64 years old, I said. I've lost my husband. I've lost 40 years of memories. I've just learned my parents were criminals. I met his eyes. I'm tired of fighting. Derek positioned the needle against my arm. Any last words? I looked at him, this man who had destroyed my family, who had hidden among us for 6 years, who had killed my husband and kidnapped my grandchildren. And I smiled. Yes, I said clearly. My name is Elena Morrison. Everything happened at once. Glass shattered. Smoke grenades exploded. Voices screaming, FBI, drop your weapon. Derek spun toward the noise, and in that moment I moved. Not toward the door. Toward my grandchildren. I threw myself over Sophie and Lucas, shielding them with my body as chaos erupted around us. Gunshots, shouting, the thunder of boots on concrete. Derek raised his weapon, but not toward me. Toward the stairs. Toward the agents pouring into the room. A single shot rang out. Derek crumpled, clutching his shoulder. And then it was over. FBI agents swarmed the space. Someone was cutting the zip ties from Sophie's wrists, pulling the tape from Lucas's mouth. Someone else was pressing me back, checking me for injuries. Grandma? Sophie threw her arms around my neck, sobbing into my shoulder. Lucas grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. It's okay, I whispered, holding them both. It's over. You're safe. You're safe. Over their heads, I watched agents handcuff Derek Wallace James Harrison, the monster who had haunted my family for 40 years. Our eyes met one last time. It's not over, he said quietly. It's never over. Then they dragged him away.